Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change. I'm here to guide you from frustration to flow in your life, bridging the practical and the woo, just for you. Let's go. All right, welcome to the week, Change Gang. I have a gentleman named Jeffrey Eisen here today, and I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being here today, Jeffrey. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Laura. Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to tell you a tiny bit about Jeffrey, and then we'll dive in and have a conversation. And I really wanted to talk with him because he does one of the things that I really try to do and I bring together for a lot of people in bringing, quote unquote, the practical and the woo together. He's framed it and coined it in the name of practical spirituality. So I thought that we were kind of aligned in the way that we go about things. Jeffrey's was in, I don't know if you still are, you have to tell me, but you were in the corporate world for quite a long time, did all the things, built your empire, had all of that in a very, very practical way, in the way that world says, here's how you do it for the most part. And you did it. And then things kind of changed for you, and you're going to want to hear that story a little bit. You switched over a little bit, kind of put your, as you say, your focus on people instead of profits. It started a whole new spiritual journey for yourself where you're now doing spiritual life coaching. You channel and provide information. You've created an oracle deck, which I think is beautiful. You work with energy and all those kinds of things. And you wrote a book about some of the stuff with your son, which I think is super cool and fun. What was the change about for you, Jeffrey?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had dropped out of university in second year. I was 21 years old. I had always been interested in the family business. Didn't realize until I went on my journey of self-discovery that it was probably really to get the attention and recognition and appreciation from my late father. And so he seemed to be most interested in his business. It made sense. Be interested in the business and then he'll pay attention to you. Pretty logical, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and his brother, my uncle, had passed away at a young age, and it really took a lot out of my dad. So I went off to university. I was going to challenge myself with getting a really tough education, hone that brain that I thought I needed to be in business. And after second year, it's like, no, I'm wasting my time. Let's go back to the business. And so at 21, I did. I stayed there for about 30 years, built it up, and I've accomplished a lot of the financial goals that often we set for ourselves. I got married, had 3 kids, pool in the backyard, a dog. One would say, all right, that's a pretty ideal life. Eh? What else would you want? But as I turned 50, I started to question whether there was more to life. And I had some health issues, and our middle son had some health issues, and so it was like there was this nudging, and I didn't realize at the time where it was coming from, but I truly believe it was spirit nudging me along. And so we had actually hired a human resources consultant because the company had grown enough that we needed to look at culture and training. And he was an interesting guy, and I was interested in business leadership, but he sort of turned me a little bit on to personal development. And so I remember going on vacation, reading a couple of books he gave me. It was from Robin Sharma, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And I was fascinated by it. I went out, got another book of his, came back from vacation, looked him up. I saw he was doing a workshop. We attended with some family members and members from the company. And it was like, yeah, this is amazing. And he was my first coach. If I thought about it, I probably would have never done it. But there was this nudging inside that said, go for it. And I did. And, there were a few coaches after that. He taught me some practices like early morning awakening. I would get up at 5 o'clock. I would read, I would meditate, I would journal. All of this is very new to me because for those 30 years in business, I was so stressed out. I had gastrointestinal issues. I had Crohn's disease from my mid-20s. I would have backaches, and all of a sudden I'm open to this other way of living, meditation, quieting the mind. I started to read furbishly, 50, 60 books, workshops, going to alternative healing modalities. And it's like, where was this stuff all my life? It's like, wow. And I loved it. And I then lost interest in the business, and eventually we sold it. I realized that what I was learning, I needed to teach to people. And somewhere along that journey, through my journaling practice, I started to connect to the unseen world, and that was a big game changer for me. That's what I've been doing. Do we still have the business? Absolutely not. I've been on my journey about 20 years. I'm 72 years old. I'm dedicating my life to my purpose, which is to awakening and empowering and inspiring others by sharing my love and wisdom. And that's it. That's all there is.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And there must have been a time when you were in that transition process where some of the people around you kind of got confused or were like, what's happening? What's going on with you? Are you going off the deep end?
Exactly. And yeah, because I did a 180. I had gone through much of my beliefs. I know, you are big into change. And so, how do you change everything you believe, and how do you give up on what identified you and re-identify yourself? And so, yeah, there were new people coming up, and there were other people that were left behind. Because I left the world of business, a lot of those connections just faded away. Family, they were reasonably understanding. They didn't understand what the heck was going on with me, but I didn't get too much pushback. What was really interesting, before we started, we wanted to make sure you pronounced my name right. And it reminded me that for most of my life, my given name is Jeffrey, but for most of my life, I was Jeff. And I allowed myself to be Jeff. And it's interesting because if I meet people back from my prior life, I say I had a do-over, and it was like living two lives in one, so fortunate. And every once in a while, I meet people from my prior life and they say Jeff. And I kind of cringe because somewhere I read on my journey that your given name is directly related to your soul's purpose. And that just resonated so much. And so I had realized that I was really kind of cutting myself off by shortening that name. I was minimizing who I was. And I mean, when I began my coaching, I didn't even want to go by my name. It was, my brand was Awakening the Self, the journey of self-discovery. But that whole process of realizing that my name was Jeffrey, and eventually to the point where my brand is now my name, and I feel pretty good about that. I feel great about that, actually. It's interesting, when I do meet people. A few weekends ago, we were at a family affair, and someone would say, Jeff, and it's like, are you talking to me? and so that name change, so to speak, was instrumental in realizing that that's who I was and this is who I am. But there's no doubt that as we shift and change, we do alienate some of the people. I coach a lot of people who have difficulty with, as they embark on their spiritual journey, where family and friends just don't understand them. And it does take courage to stick with your journey. I guess I was so happy and so fulfilled, and it just felt so right that, to be honest, I didn't give a damn.
For you.
Yeah, it's like, that was all part of the learning, is to let go of the opinions of others. And, here I am 20 years later, still working on that, right? But
I think that's a lifetime thing. I think that's just something that comes in and out. It's whether you continue to let it grow or be a part of you, or you just kind of wave it on by, as with so many things in life. We're not meant to dwell in anything really, except just kind of let it go by and experience the next thing and experience the next thing. And one of the things I love, though, and this must, well, I'm asking if it happened, I guess. I'm imagining that this happened. You obviously went through first half of your life or quarter of your life or whatever it's going to be, the first few years of your life there, in a very practical sense and in a very business-oriented manner. Sometimes I think for especially a lot of the people who are in any kind of spiritual art or way of being or business, the actual business side of it can come hard. But I think that you came into it with such an amazing way, that a bit of a wonderful blend that you bring in, because you know all that already. You're probably able to help people with it, I would think, to allow things to be on the practical side of it and not get lost in the woo world, in the spirituality of it. And so have you found that that's been really useful for you to be able to kind of come from that part of yourself and yet be so free and open? It's still got to be like a little underlying thing that's in you because you did it for so long.
It's an interesting question. Now, yeah, maybe, but I had to do a lot of healing, because don't forget that first part of my life, and it wasn't a few years, I mean, it was 50 years, represented the pain and the suffering and the hurt and the stress and the not sleeping. And, I'll be quite honest, even my practice today, I have difficulty sometimes doing the business things. Like I'm a terrible marketer, because I had to make a living selling and making sure that, you tried to get people to buy from you. And now I have a bit of a team of people that help me, and it's like, I didn't treat them the way, I was a reasonable leader, but a capitalist way is to make sure that you don't pay as much to your employees, so there's more at the bottom line. It has certainly helped, but there was a lot of healing that had to happen as I let go of that practical. But one of the things that I've come to learn in my spirituality, that one of the big purposes of human life is to master the duality, to bring forth. Shaltazar, that's the entity that I channel, has taught me that often we, like me, you start with that practical left brain, and you are able to connect your divinity, and you kind of like to retreat into that meditation and all of those practices. And it's sort of as an escape, because you kind of have to distance yourself from the left brain as you open up, more of your intuitive, more of your divinity. And some people remain there, and that's okay, and they live this double life. But what I have found, and what I like to help people, is bringing it back together. So I can tap in to my guidance, I can tap into my divinity, and I can get some amazing intuitive nudges. But then it's me putting it into place. And so how do I apply the practical? Now, I guess what my past life, or not my past life, but the first part of this life taught me, was doing it with force and push and need to and have to is not the right energy. So how do we apply the practical in more of an intuitive way, more in a loving way, more in a caring way, more in an energy of allowing as opposed to pushing? And I continue to work on that, and I continue to help a lot of people work on that. And that's why I sort of call it practical spirituality, because if someone comes to me with some practical issues, then I go and I check in energetically, like what's the block, what's the belief system. So we go and we look at more of the esoteric and the mystical, and then we say, okay, well, now that we've unblocked that, how are you going to apply that? Before we got on to talk, I was thinking about change, because you're into change. And often our resistance to change is really an energetic block. It's a belief system. It's like, okay, why do we procrastinate? Well, we procrastinate because there is something going on in our mind that's telling us it's very difficult. At this point, I have experienced both the exclusive practicality. I've experienced a lot more, some exclusive divinity and intuitiveness. And now, at this age and stage of my life, I want to bring it together for me, and I want to bring it together for other people, because it's not either or, it's and in both. We need the left brain. We need the yang energy. We need the doing. Otherwise, and there's nothing wrong with it, just join an ashram and stay in peaceful contentment. But you may be missing out on some of your life experiences. So if you want both, as I say, you have to renegotiate a power sharing agreement between your head and your heart.
Absolutely. That's great. That's true. It is. It is about using all parts of yourself. And I think we're meant to do that. I mean, we came into this physical world and we're in the physicality of it but you don't just sit, and it's so funny because I talk with people and so often I hear, especially from very spiritual people, I'm waiting for a sign. I'm waiting for the universe to show me. I'm waiting. And I say, that's great, but I have to tell you, the universe is sitting right next to you, waiting for you to take a step forward so it knows where to go, what to do, how to help you. So
Right.
you have to be the one that steps out.
Right.
And it's just, you're not going to get it done until you do some of those
Right.
things.
You won't get that intuitive guidance until you start taking some action. You've got to show them that you're serious. And what I teach is that the universe communicates to us in a bit of a treasure hunt. They don't speak a language. If you're waiting for that clear sign, if you're waiting for that loud voice from the higher realms, you're going to be waiting around a long time. It's subtle. Often I have found it's 3 steps forward, 1 step back, another side step, and that action is really important. And that's one of the biggest issues that I come across is people adjusting the action part, the doing part, the masculine, especially the way the world is today, that I think our masculine energy has become too forceful, too powerful. And you can take action as people like Mother Teresa in a very loving, kind way and get a lot done. But you have to unlearn what we're taught about taking action, that it's pushing and shoving. And one of my favorite couple cards in the Oracle card deck, one is let go of the plan and another one is let go of pushing. And so it's retraining your doing to be a kinder, gentler, intuitive flow doing.
I don't know if you know, but I'm an astrologer as well. And one of the things that's so interesting with what you're saying right now is that things really are changing. And we've had a huge energetic change with Saturn. Saturn is a really big, intense energy. For a very long time, it's been in that get done energy. Get it done. Do the thing you have to accomplish. Put all the plans in place. Do all the things, that leadership intensity that's there in the way that you're talking about. And it's just shifted recently. It's in a new, wonderful kind of idea energy, community energy, networking energy, also very genius kind of oriented in our own versions of genius. And what I'm finding with people, it's so fascinating, is some people, because they've been in that kind of an energy for so long, oh my gosh, get it done. It's like, oh my goodness, it's like this weight, this big mantle has been lifted off of them, and they can breathe again, and they can feel, and they can be. But for others, there are some out there, they're feeling very untethered, ungrounded, like, oh, what's happening? What's going on? I don't understand. Because they've been in that energy for so long, it's normal, and it's what they're used to, and being in that. And so it's very disconcerting for them. And so it's interesting to see.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating you say that, by the way, because I'm not into astrology. A friend and collaborator, the voice of Shaltazar on the audio collection for the Wisdom of Shaltazar Oracle cards, is an astrologer. Shaltazar leads me to believe that we're in the energy of the great potential for change, where no change is not an option. And I truly believe, I don't get into how that energy comes forth, but I'm a firm believer that it's astrology, it's the planets, it's something that we don't always understand. So that makes total sense, because the sense I'm getting is we're entering this era where a softer, gentler, masculine energy is possible. And so you saying what you say, it's like, oh, okay, that's how the source is doing it. I didn't know that. That makes sense. But I just want to follow up. I think of the two types of people, the ones that are rejoicing in that lighter energy and the ones that are having a little more difficulty adjusting. I think the majority is in the second, because we have been so trained. I run across all kinds of people, very spiritual people, and they have been so conditioned and indoctrinated in the pushing and the planning and the getting it done that they are finding it difficult to adapt to this new energy of allowing miracles to come forth in your life.
Yeah, because they've been told for so long, and there's whole generations that have been in that energy for a very long time, and told you have to get up, you have to work hard, you have to do the thing, you have to get it done, and push, and you're right. Now it's, oh, let's take a breath, let's see, and let's network, and you don't have to work so hard, and it can be disconcerting, but there's ways to work around that, in all the different ways and all the different things that can be helpful in that. I wanted to run back before I forget, because when you brought up Shaltazar and you brought up healing, I'm really curious for you if Shaltazar if that channeling experience and that connection came from your process of healing during your healing, or if you went through your healing and that's when it showed up.
That's interesting, because I've chosen to go back and reread my journals, because being this older guy, I don't really, my recall isn't what it used to be. And someone gave me a term a while ago that I love, and it's called age appropriate, right? So whenever you forget, it's like, oh, that's age appropriate, right? That's fair enough. In the beginning, the healing seemed to be, as I'm rereading my journal, as if I was having conversations with God. It's sort of like a Neil Donald Walsh thing, where I would ask questions and answers would come back. So I really believe that what I believed I was chatting with was this energy, this loving, parental guidance. And that is what helped me through the healing. There was a point, though, where, and I haven't got to that point in my journals, I did have one entry that felt different, and I recognized that more as the Shaltazar energy. I know there had to come a point where, I think, when the healing was done, because that journaling process, it's a beautiful question you asked, that journaling process, the origins of it were me trying to process the unexpressed emotions that I had built up. I had gone early in my journey to a shaman who scanned my body and said that my lower chakras were like a tar field of unexpressed emotions. The journaling was that healing process of letting go, I hate this, I hate that. And that's when I believe, the higher power, God, was coming in and sort of helping me heal, to relax and surrender. And then at a certain point, I believe the energy of Shaltazar came in, and I knew them as the Gavish Baninu, or the giver or teacher, Baninu, of all that is good or divine wisdom, the energy of 33, the master teacher. When the healing was kind of finished, then I got to go to school and I was educated. Now, what's really fascinating is within the last year or so, I had a Reiki session, and the Reiki master was able to sense the Shaltazar energy in the room, and said she was getting 44. I said, are you sure? I think it's 33. And after I reflected, meditated, checked it out, 44 is the master healer. And so I'm sensing that energy, that I went from healing to being the student to now channeling some healing energy more for the collective. Thank you for that question. I didn't realize it until you asked it. And that's kind of interesting that, my personal healing went into being a student of human life and of life. The energy of 33 is a master teacher. And so as they brought forth these master teachings, I had to try and figure out, well, what did that mean? What does that mean in practical living? And now it's kind of interesting that I guess I've been sort of tapped on the shoulder to help bring forth healing to other people. Maybe that means I've graduated to a certain point, although I know I will always be a student of life until the day I go home back to where I came from.
Me too. How can you not, with all the stuff and all the fun doors you get to open and go through, and the awarenesses that you get to tap into? It's so cool. Thank you for that answer. That was beautiful. And I love that.
Thank you for that question. It was beautiful. Yeah. I never thought about it that way. And that's the beauty of life, right? The universe comes through. Obviously came through with that question, because I'd never thought about my connection to the divine in terms of healing, but it was there. I'm just coming to the end of those conversations where I would ask God, what about this and what about that? And how can I have peace and still get things done? And So that was definitely a very healing part of my journey. And the divine was there to guide me.
I love that. That's gorgeous. That is so, and I can't believe it, but we're almost like in our 30-minute mark. We'll continue this in another episode if you're good with that.
Sure, love to. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. You've made me think. You've helped me with some clarity, so thank you.
That's great. I love when I can be useful too. That's an amazing thing.
Oh, you are very useful.
Go ahead. I would love for you. I'll go ahead and have everything in the show notes. But if you don't mind sharing a couple places that people can connect with you, I would love for you to share that.
Sure. Thank you so much. Probably the best place to start is jeffreyeisen.com. And as I mentioned earlier, I hid behind Awakening the Self for the longest time. And then for a while, I hid behind Shaltazar. And it's like, I'm coming out now. So real easy. jeffreyeisen.com is the website. I am on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram and at LinkedIn. You can certainly just search. One of the platforms that I've been on for a number of years that I love is called Insight Timer. It's an amazing app. If you're familiar with it, it's great. There's like 18 to 20,000 teachers. I've been honored to be a teacher there for a number of years. All of the messages of Shaltazar. By the way, there are over 120 messages of Shaltazar now, right from the beginning. There's about 50 podcasts that I've done with my good friend and collaborator, Mark Lane, where we dissect and unravel the wisdom. I invite people to join Insight Timer. There's a free version of it. Put my name in, follow me, check that out. And I am most excited about the Oracle card deck, the Wisdom of Shaltazar Oracle cards, as well as those 120 messages. A good friend and my graphic designer and web designer said, why don't you do an Oracle card deck? And I was a big fan of Oracle card decks, and I never really contemplated doing one, but it's like, well, okay. And she did the graphics, and I brought more bite-sized wisdom pieces from Shaltazar. There are 55 cards in the deck. 55 is a strong change number, and you can learn more about that on my website as well. So that's my advertising.
Wonderful. And I've seen some of the readings from your cards. They're wonderful and they're fun and insightful. I love that you did that. I love that.
Yeah. Well, at this age and stage of my life, it's all about continuing to learn and share that love and wisdom with as many people as I can. And thank you for this opportunity. So for whoever is listening or watching, I thank you for that opportunity to share what I have learned in my life so far.
Any last wonderful words of wisdom or something that you would like to share with the people out there?
You would, being focused on change, I would highly recommend that people embrace change. It's going to get very rocky. It's, there's a little bit of solace I have when I see some of the horrific things going on in the world from a spiritual perspective. I say, oh yeah, that's the energy of the great potential for change. There's no way that the universe can encourage that change other than sort of tightening the screws, so to speak. So do not accept the status quo. Change anything you possibly can. Embrace change, because if not, the ride's going to get a bit bumpy. I know you help a lot of people with that change. So forget about hiding in your shell. There's no turtle shells available. Embrace that change. And as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, because the more of us that change, the more of us that shift to that kinder, gentler, masculine energy, the sooner we will have some peace and more love in our world.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Well, I'm kind of talking to the converted on that one. And there are lots and lots of beautiful teachers, light workers, therapists, counselors, coaches. We need community and we need help, because this change is difficult to do on your own.
All right. There we go. There you go, Change Gang. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. I hope that you go connect with Jeffrey and have some fun with that. Enlighten yourself a little bit about some of the information that he has for you and some of the connection and maybe some of the words that Shaltazar has for you as well. So I hope that you go into the week. I hope you have a wonderful one, and I hope that you meet me same time next week right here. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting to you in some way and fun. If so, hey, find someone to share it with. Maybe they need to hear it too, or maybe they'll just enjoy it. If you'd like, go ahead and grab my tips on supercharging your success. It includes a free short meditation to do just that. You can find that at bit.ly/supercharge your success. Until next time, happy day.